So good morning, everybody. My name is Sorka Finucane, and I am the owner and founder of Trained In. Trained In is a global platform that is designated to training and consultancy providers across the spectrum. So anything from executive board level, senior management, frontline employees, health and safety, pharmaceuticals, specialized training, everything all the way across to the everyday. So anything from mental health awareness, nutrition, well-being, personal training, yoga, Pilates, driving instructing. So anything that you want, you can find it on Trained In. It's free to advertise and free to sign up. And you will see a number of offers coming up from both myself and Helen, which will just give you links to our page where you can either sign up or book an appointment. We're going to run a couple of polls during the webinar. So I'm just going to pop one up there now. I'm literally going to listen to what Helen's saying and maybe create a poll to get a gauge of where people are at and to promote engagement, I suppose. These webinars are run in conjunction with Taste Your Success SkillNet, and we're thanking them very much for their support in all of this. So just a few housekeeping rules before we kick off. We can't see you and we can't hear you. So don't worry if your camera is switched off and you're in your dressing gown, it's all good. We do want to promote engagement. So please use the chat facility and ask any questions that you have or make a comment. And I will manage the chat and interrupt Helen when I think it's appropriate. We will, as I said, we're running a couple of polls. There's one there at the moment. What level of emotional intelligence do you have? So I suppose it's just getting people's gauge on where they are. Some people might not even know. And then there's a couple of offers, and I'm going to have a quick chat with Helen. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And in about 10 minutes, we're going to run Helen's presentation. So good morning, Helen. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and who you are and what you do.
Thank you, Sorka. So my name is Helen Prendergast. I started a company called Head Start Consultancy 2019. I have spent a year working on it. Prior to that, I had more to explore, but I was so overwhelmed in the year leading up to that with the number of clients who were coming into me that were totally stressed out, that were totally having almost nervous breakdowns because of the volume of work that was being thrown at them, the lack of communication with their leaders and their CEOs, the inability for them to be able to communicate any of their difficulties. So I was starting anyway with why I started Head Start Consultancy, and I'll abbreviate that now. And it was mainly to help people's mental health in the workplace. And mental health wasn't much talked about. Since then, and since Corona-19, it is now, COVID-19, it is now so well spoken about. And in that, I suppose we are all maybe slightly relieved that people are now able to talk about it more comfortably. Are you hearing me, Sorka? Okay. So, if we move on to the, and just before I do, may I please thank Sorka and please thank Trained In, because you have made this so easy for me, and it is so absolutely wonderful and exciting as a cocooner to be going cuckoo, making my very first webinar. So thank you, and thank you to Trained In, because I really value what you do, and you've just been so supportive. If I can go to my first slide, which I'm not seeing.
1 second. I'll do it for you now. 1 second.
Yeah, and then we just move on to the next. So really, let's look at our lives just now, everybody, and let's realize that nothing is normal. We are now going to have to create our very own new normal. And we are creating it, but, you know, we're struggling. I don't know about you, but I'm struggling. And sometimes when I even admit to myself I'm struggling, I feel almost emotional about it, because my struggles are very different, I'm sure, to most of your struggles, and lots of your struggles are different to other people's struggles. You know, that those of you who are working from home, you have children at school, you're facing financial difficulties, struggling with our relationships. I was passing a house just beside me recently, and I heard this lady, and she was, you know, really finding it difficult. I knew she was one of the children that got on her laptop, and I could hear her, and I thought, oh God, that is so difficult. So, you know, this is not going to be a sprint. This is going to be a marathon. And we really have to try and accept that in that metaphorical emotional bucket you are looking at, we are having so many holes and leaks out of it. And how are we going to actually deal with it? And it's not easy. And I don't suppose anybody is finding it easy. But let's look at it this way. You know, you're going through one thing, other people are going through something else. It's a kind of comparative suffering. And I feel guilty sometimes because, you know, I feel quite privileged on the one hand, where I live. I don't have children working from home. I don't have to be trying to work that much from home myself, apart from the madness of deciding to do this webinar. And I have friends who are having enormous difficulties. Their families have health issues. And then I feel guilty. I feel guilty because my sadness and my struggle isn't as bad as their struggle. And that's not how it should work. You know, I don't think we can deny ourselves our feelings. My feelings are what I feel, and your feelings are what you feel. And so sometimes that little bit of shame and guilt that comes over me, I have to say, no, Helen, it's okay. I was in the shower the other morning and I was crying. It was my sister's 80th birthday. Couldn't be there. You know, everybody has their struggle, and it's difficult. And it's a difficult world that we're in, never before experienced, and dear God, hopefully never again to be experienced. So we'll have to stop ranking our suffering, and we'll have to try and put it into perspective that everybody has their issues and their problems. And we were talking, at least the theme was around emotional intelligence. You know, let's have a look at the whole concept of it, because in 1995, I think Daniel Goleman, now it was well before his time again, but you know, that's when I first started looking at it and started studying what emotional intelligence was about. Growing up in Ireland, we all had, we kind of knew what the IQ was. You know, it was a big blinking word in Ireland anyway. You know, it's what did you get in this exam and that exam, and this God blessed leaving cert, and God help the poor unfortunates that don't even know when they're doing it. But, you know, the IQ is how we seem to rank people. You're born with your IQ. It develops along the way. We work on it. You're born with your personality. You're either that introvert or you're that extrovert. I was born an extrovert, and thankfully I was. It suits me. But that doesn't mean that people who are introverted do not have exactly the same feelings, and that they are not just as good and not better, indeed. But we can work on our emotional intelligence. And this is what I feel very, very strongly about. We have the ability to actually work and understand the various cauldrons of emotions that are going on within us. If we take, this is my own experience, this is where I was reared as a child. And that wee house that you can see in behind those tombstones, that was, I would say, the house of Mrs. Bouquet. And if any of you have ever looked at Mrs. Bouquet on television, well, my mother, I think, had to be the original Mrs. Bouquet. So as a child, 3-year-old up to 10, I was not allowed to play actually with any of the neighbours around. I had one friend I was allowed to play with. And this was our playground. Strange place. The house itself was actually originally meant to be a priest's house, but none of the priests would live in it because it was in a churchyard, but they wouldn't live in it because they were afraid of the graveyard cemetery. Isn't that amazing? So that was my playground, and I had a wonderful array of friends. As you can see, every day I had little tea parties, and this was my table and the broken bits of china, and I just went around and invited everybody from the various graves and asked them if they'd like to join me. And my little friend that I was allowed, Colette, and we had wonderful times there. And it was the playground. And then one day, when Colette was 11 or 12, she was killed in a car accident. Oh. And that's when playground was no longer a playground. And you realized as a child that you were actually feeling an emotion that you didn't quite understand, but you knew it was sadness. And you felt sad. In those days, nobody talked to you about what you were feeling or not feeling. Nobody talked feelings. Emotions were locked away and they weren't talked about. And that was particularly Irish, but maybe it's particularly other countries as well. And I feel now that I'm older, yes, it certainly was other countries as well. So let's have a look at what is this emotional intelligence and how useful is it for companies, leaders, CEOs, managers, parents, people in any sort of authority, how important it is for them in understanding emotional intelligence to make them, help them to be better leaders, to be better people, where, you know, the ego is not the big conspirator here, but that, you know, being able to understand and regulate our emotions and the emotions of those around us is important. So if we look at just the slide there, you know, if we have the ability, first of all, this slide here is based on what we call the ruler concept. It was developed in Yale and Harvard. And if you can see, I have the words underlined. And the first one we need to know is, how do we actually recognize our emotions? If you ask a child, because a child doesn't have an emotional vocabulary, you know, what are you feeling? They'll probably say, I'm sad, I'm happy. They might say angry. They don't have a vocabulary for many more. And for us as adults to recognize our emotions. So we wake up in the morning and you wake up, I mean, I wake up nearly every morning thinking, oh God, COVID-19 is there. It wasn't a dream. It's really there. And I try to tune into, you know, what's actually going on inside me? How am I feeling? What emotion is the strongest? And you know, fear is a big, big one out there now, and anxiety. And fear and anxiety are very strong emotions, and they really inculcate all parts of our lives and our work, especially for people who are struggling with so much. And we need to understand then, and that's the you in ruler, understand what they're telling us and what extent they are affecting me, and in a minute, what effect we're having on the people around us. So can I label my emotion? This morning, there was anxiety about doing this, twice as much anxiety when it wouldn't work a while ago with whatever my new earphones were doing. And to be able to label them, you know, I was also excited because Circa makes this exciting, actually. So I was quite excited that as a cocooner, I am giving my first webinar. The most important thing when we're looking at our emotions is that we realize how those emotions are affecting those around us. If you're trying to work in virtual teams, Zoom calls, God bless me, I've sat in on a few Zoom calls, and they're difficult. And that's only me in a learning way doing it, but you trying to work. This is very, very difficult. And how your emotions are and your frustrations and your anger. I spent quite a bit of time being angry at the beginning of COVID-19. I was angry because I was told to cocoon. And I thought, I'll go cuckoo. Seriously. Why are they telling me to cocoon? They just put a blank 70 on it and said, right, that's it. And I was going around saying, why am I so angry? But I really was. And then I realized that's just one of my emotions until I deal with it and understand it and understand why it was done and accept why it was done. So we need to be very, very aware that our emotions have an impact on those people around us. You know, they help us if we understand them in when we're trying to make a decision. They help us in our relationships with our partners, with our children, our physical and mental state. You know, we have to try and be aware of the emotions that are driving that. And then we have to try to regulate them. So how do we manage it? How good is our self-management of the emotions? There's a cauldron of emotions going on within each of us, because never before has there been a COVID-19. And hopefully, and we need to have hope, that this will end, this will go away, and we will have learned so much from it. Some of us sadly, maybe some of us badly, but I see so much kindness and so much goodness out there too. And I see so many families more together, and they're all baking their banana breads and their sourdough breads. And I know the emotions that we have, the emotion we always seem to find most difficult to embrace is joy. Yeah. Strangely enough. Because every time we feel joyful, we feel, oh God, I feel so guilty because I shouldn't be feeling happy because, you know, my friend has all this going on and there's people much worse off and I shouldn't even be feeling happy today. But long before COVID-19, happiness, joy was one of the hardest because of our guilt. And in Ireland, our good old Catholic guilt, because you're not meant to be feeling that happy, really. And would you believe that all the emotions, there's about 30 emotions, and there's a study being done on this in Harvard at the moment, and there's 30 emotions ranging from, like, you know, things that we mightn't always think of as an emotion, you know, when we're feeling overwhelmed or we're feeling vulnerable and we're feeling humiliated, and so many different things, so many different emotions, and they're still working on them. How many of them can you name for you? How many of them do you actually tune into and take time to feel and understand and appreciate how they are affecting you and also how they are affecting others around you?
Helen, do you think that it's good that you understand what all of the different emotions are and how they can impact individual people, so that you have an understanding of an emotion, so if and when you experience that emotion, that you don't become then angry or anxious or scared because of you don't know what you're experiencing? Like, I was talking to a child psychologist before, and she had said that children aren't taught about emotions in school. So when they experience something, they don't know how to deal with it. And that could be anger or sadness or loneliness or humiliation. So actually teaching and understanding what an emotion is helps people cope with it.
Of course. And, you know, and it's the little children sometimes, it's their little faces, it's their little body language. And it's reading the body language, because a child's body language is brilliant. To see the lady sitting beside Trump when he was talking about injecting, I think she was somebody who was giving him the medical advice from World Health Organization. I'm sorry that I am not good enough to put that little clip up on this, because if you wanted to see body language at its best, you could look at her. And
I'll find
children need to see from our example. So if we're understanding our emotions, if we're able to talk about them, and if they see us as coping with our emotions, that helps. You know, when I said in the cemetery was my first experience of emotional my own little start of emotional development, I would have spent the next 30 years not knowing and expressing, understanding, or coping with any emotion, because I just skedaddled through life, through university, got married, had 4 kids. And I started in UCC qualifying as a social worker. That lasted 6 months, as my father had prophesied. Because I couldn't deal with the emotions that all these people that were suffering had, and I hadn't been taught to. But I went back to Trinity when I was 43 or 4 to study therapy, counselling therapy. And every morning we would be sitting around in a group, our personal development. And every morning the facilitator would go around the group and, how are you today, Mary? And how are you today? And they were all, telling how they felt and all these feelings. She'd always come to me and she'd say, how are you, Helen? And I'd say, oh, I'm fine, because I didn't really know what they were all going on about. And one day she came and she said, are you fine again today, Helen? I said, yes, Margaret. And she said, well, let's look at fine. F-I-N-E. So, excuse me, listeners. So you're fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. Is that how you really are? I was never fine again. I decided, oh my God, that was the end of my being fine. I just was not able. I was not able to get into those emotions. And self-awareness really began for me at that stage of my life. It really began and really became a huge part of my life in trying to understand my emotions and getting in touch with those emotions, because they helped me in my relationships big time. And they helped me to understand my relationships. I'm trying to move on. So self-awareness is the beginning of your emotional intelligence.
Yeah. I have that clip, Helen, if you want to watch it, with no sound, so you can talk over it if you want to.
Which one is this? The one with
the one of the doctor
Yes. Look at her emotion. Look at her body language.
Let's share a screen. No, I'm sharing it with no sound, so
yeah. So we can just get her. This is when he is coming out with the most ludicrous stuff, and he's looking over at her. But his body language is always a study in itself. He's such a closed shop of emotion.
It's like he's looking for validation from somebody.
Now that wasn't the guy I wanted. Actually, there was a lady.
Oh, no, it was the lady. There she is. She is. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you see, she's already shifting, looking so uncomfortable. And then you can leave that one. But it's just the incredulous look on her face. I'm just going to go back to the slide I was just coming on to there. It's well worth putting her in slow motion and looking. I think she wants the earth to swallow her. Have we the next slide?
Yeah, I'll put it back up there now.
Okay. So one thing, recognizing our own emotions, and the next thing is managing them. And if I'm trying to manage my emotion and I'm feeling angry and I'm feeling frustrated and this computer is driving me mad as it was yesterday, etc., I have to watch how I manage that. So the ability to refrain from a knee-jerk reaction in response to my emotion. So, I could have kicked the dog out the door, but he's a good dog. I didn't. But I did certainly snap at my partner. And I realized I was really being short. Even nice gestures like, would you like a cup of tea or a cup of coffee? No, thank you. I haven't time. The way we can respond.
Yeah.
The ability to engage pop. I said this out in California. I was giving a similar workshop to a crowd with Hub International out there. And they all thought this was so funny. And then pop means the power of pause. But my Irish accent on the word pause and their interpretation got a little bit confusing. So it is actually the ability to actually shut up. Power of pause. I keep saying it. When we want to fly off the handle, when we want to tell someone what we think of them, when we want to be really, really angry with somebody, step back, engage, pause, engage, pop. And when you're doing that, tune into yourself and see what emotion is going on for you. And we need to be able to determine what is important in our lives just now. What are the important issues, and to be able to prioritize those accordingly. You know, what can we focus on just now? What do we need to focus on just now? What can we control just now? Vulnerability. Don't I feel so vulnerable? Even exposing myself on this, don't I feel so vulnerable? At the moment, I feel vulnerable because I can't see my children, I can't see my grandchildren. And there are those of you, you know, who probably have been hit by tragedy during this. And it's okay to actually be vulnerable. And it's okay to admit that we're vulnerable. And it's a greater sign of courage and strength to be able to say I'm struggling than it is to carry on as if everything is fine, as it used to be with me. And I find it much easier if I can talk to somebody and they're saying, Helen, I'm struggling just now. A friend of mine was on a Zoom having a drink with me and two others on Zoom the other night. And she said, hey girls, yesterday she said I was really, really struggling. She was crying. And I found that so hard because, you know, when you can't be there for somebody just like that. And we just all said, it's okay. You know, we all have those days and you will have them and everyone has them. But what are the things that we can do? What actions can we take to help us just now? What are the things that we could do? Look, for God's sakes, limit the news intake, limit the screen time, beware the fear mongers, you know, and your communication is vital. How you're communicating with your workers. If you're a manager, if you're a leader, are you actually tuning into what's important in your company in terms of their loss, which is huge, I know, but your workers are struggling too. Everybody just now is struggling. And as leaders, managers, parents, teachers, we need to actually have compassion and empathy and understand, or try to understand. And don't let our pride get in the way. So look at where can you put your focus now. I hope each of you are trying to get the exercise, trying to eat some good food. Let's all try not to learn how to make too many cocktails. I would say, though, particularly limit the news intake because it doesn't help our anxiety and it doesn't help our fears. Yes, my son said to me the other day, but you can't put your head down a rabbit hole either, Mom. I said, no, darling, I don't put my head down the rabbit hole. I just peep up every now and again to know what's happening, and then I duck back down to protect myself. And we need to protect ourselves. The next really important part of emotional intelligence is compassion. Understanding how important it is to be compassionate to those around us who are suffering. Everybody is going through their own struggle just now. And we need to respect it, we need to honor it, and we need to put some perspective on it. You know, perspective, seeing the world as others do, but let's face it, we all see things from our own perspective, you know, and, you know, our own perspective is viewed through our own lens, based on our own life, our own history, where we came from. It's soldered to our eyes, soldered to us, that perspective, because it's only from our own experience, from our own life, from our own past, from our own history, from our own culture, which makes it difficult. We're dealing with people, so many of them from different cultures, and their perspective may be different to ours. But let's not judge them. Let's stop being judgmental and blaming. Twitter is a cesspool of judgment. And they can hide behind anonymous names, which really annoys me. And I go on to it mainly, possibly for my business purposes, but then I get kind of locked into it sometimes. And then I think, oh God, I'm never going back on that again, because there's so many judgmental people. And as we are communicating with people, we just need to be aware of the fact that we must try and get inside their shoes, inside their heads, try and understand their pain. Give them the attention as much as we can just now. And that must be our greatest intention, is to show that compassion to everybody around us. But definitely to show it to ourselves. Because if you're not going to be compassionate with yourself, forget about being able to be compassionate for anybody else in your workplace or outside your workplace. Because regardless of how we're raised or what we believe, we are all fighting this, our silent battles every day, long before COVID-19. But now we're fighting them. And each time we just mightn't always think we're doing it well enough or good enough. And you can only be good enough. That's all we can be. So when we're feeling ashamed of feeling vulnerable and struggling, or I'm bawling my eyes out in the shower because I can't see my family, you know, and I can even feel emotional saying it, but compassion is the antidote to shame. I don't want to feel ashamed if I'm struggling, and nobody should. So it's okay to not be okay, and that's for sure. Your mental health is important and your relationships are important. And I've talked already about this. So, try and reach out more to your workers and your co-workers and communicate to your family and to your friends, because they really don't care how much you know, but they do care that you care. And that one didn't come right there. But what I'm really saying is, all of you leaders, managers out there, if you don't listen and communicate and take that time to tune into your workers just now, leaders who don't listen, they'll eventually be surrounded by people who really don't care anymore. Sarka, back to you.
Helen, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. I didn't want to interrupt you there.
I know.
Because I think everybody was listening to what you were saying and loving your insight and what you were teaching or teaching us. So just going back on some of the chat, there's loads of chat for from people. So everybody could hear you at that point when the earphones were going. So it was just on my end, so it wasn't you. But if people have questions that you'd like to ask Helen, or to make some points, please use your chat facility now and make time, make the best of the time. Adriana had said, yes, we're fighting the same storm, but we're not in the same boats. And I think that's really true, that everybody, it's really good. Everybody experiences things differently, even though that we're experiencing the same thing.
Yes.
I suppose some people might be having positive experiences because things are going well, and then other people are experiencing completely devastating things because of loved ones who are ill or who have passed away, or business that have been lost. So it's I suppose understanding yourself, understanding those around you. I have to say though, I take solace in the fact that this is a global epidemic, as opposed to something that's local, that just affects me or just affects our county or our country, because it's everything. It's nearly easier to cope with. I know that might sound a little bit strange. What else? Donal had said, even gravity doesn't know which way is up. Seamus O'Rourke. I think that's a good one. Yeah. Nulik, this is fascinating. Thanks for sharing. I think that was at the point where you shared the pictures of the graveyard and the flat stone where you had your tea parties. And what else have we got? Fantastic presentation from Nulik again. I know Fergal had to jump off, but he was looking forward to listening to the replay. Laura said that was amazing. Thank you, Helen. Michael said, very well done, Helen, very insightful. Margaret has said, thank you for an excellent webinar. Pure Helen, pure gold, as always. That was lovely. Hilda has said, lovely reminder to be compassionate with self as well as others. Fiona has said, great points, Helen. Just and good to hear someone genuine. Colette has, that's separate. Kathy, thank you so much. Helen, Kerry, working in the healthcare setting, emotional intelligence is more important than ever before. Sorry, I have a little puppy. Than ever before. Hilda, all applies to parenting also. I've learned so much from this, from my young kids, but applies to all. So there's so much chat coming in that it's going down on
Sarka,
me.
Just to interrupt you for a second, this ruler concept I talked about there, one of them, that's going to be out in all of the schools. They're going to be trying to do that in all the schools in America. And I think Brezzy, is it Brezzy here, is trying to introduce
Brezzy, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's the ruler concept, but I mean, for me, I taught a program called Life Matters in the university in Cork. And, you know, that they were saying to me, some of the guys would say, well, why would we need that? What we need our emotional intelligence. We didn't need that to get in here. And I said, no, but you might need it to get out. You know? I mean, because it's so much part of it in our work.
Yeah. I'm just going back through the points that everybody's saying. Working in the healthcare setting, emotional intelligence is important, more important than ever. Thank you for this. That was from Kerry. Hilda, oh, sorry, we got the parenting. Donal, I recommend Simon Sinek on human leadership or humane leadership. Adriana, I've had to stop newsing. You're right. I only watch the news once a day now. I have to agree with that, Adria. I was one of these people at Sky News on all day. And now I don't watch it at all, to be honest.
No.
Fran has said that was a great presentation, so relevant to all that we're experiencing. Great to see you in person again. Joanne has said, really interesting, Helen, thank you. Tom Foley, thank you, Helen and Circa, great webinar, we're welcome. Karen has said, wonderful presentation, super insights. Deirdre, well done, Helen, for holding it together during the computer glitch, which was my fault in the end.
It wasn't, I think it was my issue.
Adriana, I've watched Brezzy's presentation to kids. He's really good. Yeah, he's done a lot for mental health. Anne-Marie, great presentation. Thanks, Helen. And Margaret, oh yeah, Life Matters was fab, especially as you led all the excellent workshops. A lot of praise there for you, Helen. So I think people should definitely contact you. So I have Helen's link to her website there on the offers, so you can sign up for a consultation with Helen as of next week. Seamus has said, thanks, Helen. Great session and very thought-provoking. Betty has said, well done, Helen. Betty in Belfast. Great, Betty. I know we had somebody tuning in from France earlier on as well. I think it was Deirdre. Evelyn, fantastic presentation, Helen. You have a natural calming voice. Plenty to think about now. Well done. I have to agree with you there, Helen. Evelyn, I was listening to Helen myself attentively, and your voice is very calming and relaxing. And you can tell that you know exactly what you're talking about and have experience in all of the emotions as well. So again, you're developing that connection and rapport with people, even in a virtual world. So it's fantastic. So while this is your first webinar, I'm absolutely positive that it won't be your last one, that it'll be the first of many. And EI needed even for boiling a kettle. Definitely helpful in sales pitches. It makes the difference between good and not so good salesperson. Absolutely, Anne. And I know a lot of businesses, Helen, are using emotional intelligence within their interview process, especially for senior management positions, because it'll really highlight the different personality types and how different people can be so miles apart for the same position that people have thought both candidates are on a par. So it's
Yeah.
fantastic about how you can use emotional intelligence. Anne has said, thanks, ladies, really enjoyed it. Nullag, yes, very lovely speaking voice, very good conveying at your points too. I have to agree with that. And there we have it.
Well, thank you.
There's a couple of private messages, Helen, that I will communicate with you
Relate
separately.
to me.
Yeah, no problem. They're horrendous, Helen, horrendous. No, not at all. And Una Majoey, totally agree. So it's less. I think that here we have another one, Adriana. It's my first webinar too. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, both. Great to see the slides while you talked to them. Excellent setup, ladies. Nice. Enjoy a nice cuppa. Definitely enjoy a nice cuppa now. And when this ban is lifted, I'll hopefully get to have a one soon enough with you directly myself, Helen, and we can go for a coffee and a nice big slice of cake. So listen, I think we've taken
the cocktail maker.
Oh, well, maybe.
Try the cocktail maker.
Maybe so. Listen, I think we've taken up a lot of everybody's time, and I would like to say thank you so much to everybody on the call for your attendance and for your support. It's fantastic. And these webinars are a chance for our providers to share their voice directly with you and give you an insight into who they are. So I think it was fantastic, Helen, for you to chat to everybody.
Look what you did for me, Sarka. Look what you did for a cocooner. You made her do her first webinar.
There you are, and now you're an absolute professional. And you know, I'm always happy to help you, Helen, if you need anything at all going forward. I'm always here. And we'll leave it there, everybody. Thank you all again. The webinar will be available for replay anyway, and you'll get a link in the next 24 hours.
And the company's Head Start consultancy. And from next week, I will be offering some free slots for our frontline workers and any low-cost interviews or sessions anybody wants will be available as and from next week.
Great. So Kerry, if you're still on the call, I know you said you were a frontline worker, so maybe you can click there on the offers. And if you've missed it, pop me an email and we can share Helen's details with you all. Great. Listen, have a lovely day, Helen, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you again, Sarka.
And
thank you, everybody, for attending.
Stay safe. Very well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.